What's going on, esports fans? Welcome back after a jam-packed weekend. Happy to be back here again after we got to witness some good Valorant, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, and of course Call of Duty action. We got all of that to go over and more. This is Today in Esports. Hey guys, welcome back after a jam-packed weekend. Thank you so much for joining us on this fine Monday for a full episode of Today in Esports. My name is Andy. Joined with me is Eli the Ninja. The Halo legend himself is joining us on the desk. How was your weekend, man?
It was awesome. So many great esports moments to watch across literally every game that we cover. I can't wait to get into the action. I heard there's a new kid on the block in Call of Duty that's been popping off named Mercules, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say about him.
Yeah, as we were walking away from Friday's short-form episode going in towards the weekend, we were mostly going to be focusing on the green wall. And like Eli was saying, they just picked up the new gunny on the block. After Major 3 stand-in for the Toronto Ultra, Mercules is now on the green wall. They are now solidified to at least make champs, but how far will that run actually go? They had 2 matches to play this upcoming weekend, starting off against the Boston Breach. It was the 7th seed going up against the 8th seed overall, and truthfully speaking, no one knew which way this was going to go. Mercules has untapped potential, and we aren't necessarily certain what that may look like on such short notice and practice. But Hacienda Map 1 is where we're going to get this whole thing started. And Boston, as of late, ever since, I want to say maybe Major 3 qualifiers, has continuously made sneaky waves. This roster came together back for EWC at the end of last season and have stuck with their guns all the way towards this point in time. Is it friendship? Or is it just the back of house finally coming to life and making sure that this team is championship ready? This map number 1 definitely suggested more of the former. Slaying was just about even between the two teams. Cammy was definitely shooting more straight than usual, setting things up for Snoopy. As you know, your SMGs on Hacienda definitely need to have a good time. And well, at least for one half of the opposite side, you could say that for the green wall. Hook was leading the charge continuously throughout the first and second set of hard points, but it really came down towards this final point in time on P4 where we finally got to see Boston Breach extend their lead to about 40 points. They would hold that lead all the way in towards the end of the second set, and then that's when the green wall started fighting. Mercules, whether it was nerves, whether he didn't know which way to position, OpTic Texas definitely looked out of sort. They came back to fight at the end, but an insurmountable lead nonetheless, as Boston Breach were able to take map 1. They got a 1-0 lead in this series. In towards the map number 2, red card, search and destroy. This should be a map load combination you should feel right at home for Mercules. Longer lines of sight, good crosses as well, and search and destroy, we even saw he is very, very good at this game mode. But Boston Breach, they went back and forth. The first 3 rounds we traded, and then Boston ripped 3 in a row. They were in full-on cover of this map, and throughout this next round 4, round 6, they just continuously found first bloods. 7-2 first bloods in the opening duels for Boston across all of this map number 2. Now they got a 2-0 lead versus the green wall. Hacienda control. This has been OpTic's best control map, even with Skies, even with Pred, it doesn't matter. Hacienda has always been a good showcasing for both Shotzi and Dashy. Now you got some other supporting members. In Mercules, he was just not ready to go home in 2 maps. Not on his CDL debut in the green wall jersey. He went cataclysmically insane. He was reaping back lines. He was ripping them to smithereens from the front line. Absolutely insane scene to be able to see what Mason was able to do once he was given the lay of the land to do it. 19-12 towards the end of that round. Now OpTic Texas are going to force a map number 4, which means that we go to a rewind hardpoint. Back in towards the mix. Have not seen it since stage 1, but definitely a sight to behold for OpTic Texas again for Mercules. He was in his bag through these last 2 maps, starting off the Hacienda control. Get a submachine gun in this young man's hands, and he's still making plays. A nice little 5 spree out from Mason, looking for a little bit more, tries to go for the pinch inside of blue, and it works out so wonderfully for OpTic Texas, finding break after break after break. And even right here as well, through P4, very difficult hard point to break once you got square control. players all over the backside of the Burger Town. You got to fully wrap all the way back to the clothing department stores. And by then, you're already down by about 50 points. And even then, Boston Breach still did not have numbers for the break. Mercules, again, another spree for the young man. 4 spree gets the jump peak, wants to go for the ego chow, doesn't have the life, doesn't want to give away his advantage, and then slides all the way through. He'll be traded at the end, but the lead was certainly there for OpTic Texas. The same could be said for Boston of what they had in the Hacienda map number 1. And now the reverse sweep started to become a little bit more of a reality. Map number 5, Hacienda Search and Destroy. This was Boston's pick. They were setting up for it continuously. It went 10 whole rounds. Snoopy, he was able to get a whole 3-piece in a single round, including a 1v1. And although OpTic might have been fighting very difficultly, when Snoopy is shooting this straight and he's making really good decisions, you can see why Oxygen Esports and Boston Breach as a whole have continuously invested time into this young man. OpTic Texas, they went down in a map 5, but Mercules looked good along the way. Snoopy, the obvious clear-cut favorite on the opposite side for the Boston Breaches. Now they're able to extend their lead over the 8th seed for OpTic Texas, even just by a little bit. But that's only just the one series for OpTic Texas. They were then in action the following day, going up against another playoff team, the Carolina Royal Ravens. Interestingly enough, in between these two, Mercules and Rex did team together on Omit Brooklyn before Rex got the call up for Carolina. And then OpTic Texas ended up getting Mercules, or before Major 3, and the Toronto Ultra needed that emergency sub. Whatever it may be, OpTic Texas were looking really, really good in this entire series. But maybe not so much as the beginning of the map number 1. Rex, as of late, we only got to see him versus LA Thieves, but at least he was able to showcase his talents in being able to slay here. Carolina, from top to bottom, were able to put in a lot of good numbers, but now after a certain amount of practice and a day's worth of league matches, Shotzi was running around with a chick with his head cut off, went 35 and 25 in that map number 1. It's a 1-0 lead for the Green Wall. Going in towards this map number 2, we got ourselves a new wall bank spot coming through from Hook, courtesy of the Green Wall. I'm sure we're going to be seeing all of that in our ranked matches, among other things on days to come, but this was a really good spot to be if you are the Green Wall. Why? Look at that scoreboard. Carolina, they won the opening first 3 rounds. They found every first blood. And then for the next subsequent 7, OpTic Texas then flipped all of the pressure. There's something to be said about this map for dealership. There's so many fixtures. You can get the bang out through the middle of the map. You can play the long con all the way through the long routes that the map does have to offer. But when push comes to shove and that bomb's being planted, you got to be icy. And I think that when you're looking from OpTic Texas, you got Dashy, you got Mercules as your AR line, typically the last alive. They are going to ice up more often than not. They ripped 5 rounds in a row after losing the initial 3, lost the next, and then closed things out in a 6-4 win. It's a 2-0 lead for OpTic Texas over another champs team. Going in towards the Vault Control. Surely this is going to be where Carolina finally put the line in the sand, but did not seem to be the case at all. OpTic Texas just continuously and relentlessly assaulting every single opening breakoff. They won the opening round, and then following the next offense, very difficult to not only win the opening breakoff, but to be able to get the A control zone as fast as OpTic did. They were piecing. Dashy able to be there for the assistance for his teammates as well to push a little bit further forward, but it was even for the next few rounds that we saw Carolina really start to struggle. Albeit, OpTic did not convert that offense. Look at that scoreboard. Mercules is 23 and 8. He dropped a 3.09 on Carolina's forehead. Offense round be damned. After losing that one, OpTic ripped the last 2. Everybody streaking, everybody teeing off on Carolina as they had to win another offense just to maybe get a round 5 defense, let alone force a map number 4 in this series. But this might just be a glimpse of the ceiling for the new Green Wall. Mercules 65 and 43. He had the most damage in that map number 3 in one of the most impressive debuts, I will say, versus 2 champs teams. Although they may have lost that map number 5, it was a good showcasing versus the Carolina Royal Ravens, which brings us on to Sunday. As much as we would love for OpTic to play every single day of every single week, that's just not the case. So we did have 2 other champs teams facing off against each other on Sunday. It's the Boston Breach off their map 5 win from the Green Wall on Friday, going up against the Silver Surfers from the past 2 majors, the Vancouver Surge. This one was slated to be a banger on paper. Boston Breach have been showing improvements as of late. Vancouver Surge have been regressing as of late. They did not really stopped ever since the major. They were very, very open about talking about how they didn't take a break comparatively to every other team, and that's probably why they burned themselves out going in towards that series that they lost initially versus OpTic Texas, but it's all semantics. Vancouver looked damn good in this series, and albeit for the map number 1, Boston Breach had some really good moments. Purge dropped 40 for the L. When Purge is the one that's dropping these bombshell performances, it's not Awakening and it's not Snoopy. You know that Boston Breach are going to be in a real big struggle part of their game. Abuza cutting them down on every single cross on this map number 1, dropped a 1.54 KD, 43 kills for the dub, and about 5,000 damage to boot. He led the lobby not only in damage, but also in kills. KD ratio, it really did feel like that Jordan Abuse was doing no wrong. So in towards the search and destroy we go, and it was dealership. And this is a map mode combination that Vancouver Surge, I'm sure, are going to be losing sleep over. The way that they beat LA Thieves in Winners Finals 6-2, and then they lost 6-1 in the grand finals. They got 4-0 Billy Bach out of the grand finals at that. It was not a good looking until this moment in time for Vancouver Surge. They didn't drop a single round. They didn't even lose a single opening duel. 6-for-0 opening duels, a 4.5 KD for Nasty, and a 7-1 final KD ratio for 0-4. Yeah, definitely a problem I think that they've been practicing. Hacienda Control, last-ditch attempt for Boston to maybe force them their way in towards this series, but albeit the opening round a win for Vancouver, they were on offense. They did such a good job, as they always do, playing the upper halls, playing for trades, whittling information away, getting down to a 3v2, and it's all just numbers. Play on top of the zone. Wait for the numbers for the defense to give their way away, and through bottom office, the last player tries to pounce. Vancouver Surge able to convert the offense, which means that Boston, they had to do the same thing. And did they ever? They won this opening breakoff so decisively that the life advantage was so insurmountable. They got the B zone. It's the more difficult of the two zones to probably convert off the rip the way they did, but still able to transition upper halls, top and bottom office over towards the A zone. Boston Breach were able to go tit for tat. They answered back with an offense. So surely we were going to get a round 5 slobber knocker, right? Not so much as the case, as Vancouver Surge were able to convert the next offense, which means that Boston Breach had to win another offense as well. And although Vancouver said, all right, step up to the podium, little bro, Boston Breach couldn't take that next step. They get 3-0'd here versus Vancouver Surge. A 6-0 in the search and destroy, the closest map being that map number 1 of a hardpoint. Abuza definitely wants to get back towards those grand finals. He does not want to lose it versus another red team, I'm sure of it. But the green teams don't really seem to be a problem besides that week number 1 for Vancouver Surge. But maybe they just might be back in towards those grand final positions. We'll have to end up seeing it, as now we get the update fully from our major for qualifiers. Here they are. Miami Heretics, Toronto Ultra, the only undefeated 2 teams left. They're still going to be fighting each other for a round 1 or a first seed, excuse me. I don't think they actually play each other in this qualifier stage. Somebody in the comments, I guess, check on my math on that one. But LA Gorilla Mates still 0-3, 1-3 for the Vegas Falcons, 3-1 for Atlanta FaZe. Here are the qualifier schedule coming up this next weekend, or this past weekend, excuse me, and all of the results as well. They were all over the place. Cloud9 New York giving FaZe their first qualifier loss. It's the first time that Kremp has beaten Draza. Somebody somehow tell me how that makes sense, but FaZe still lost 3-1. Falcons, unfortunate to say, fully eliminated from champs. They go 0-2 on the weekend. OpTic 1-1. Ultra still looking good, beating the brakes off of Ultra. And here are the overall standings. Atlanta FaZe still the number 1 team in the game off of the head-to-head that they hold over LA Thieves, but the points are that much closer. The biggest problem is, again, from 8th all the way down to 12th. If you place outside of the top 8, you do not qualify for champs, which means that LA Gorilla Mates and the Vegas Falcons, they are fully eliminated statistically, mathematically. Other buzz phrases, it's Dunzo Bonanzo. They will not be at champs. They're going to be looking towards EWC, and there's still so much more COD left to be played. We're going to talk more about it on the upcoming Friday episode when we break it down for short form.
Thank you so much, Andy, for the updates in Call of Duty. I can't wait to see what else Mercules can do, but let's go ahead and jump over into League of Legends. Hopping into the Summoner's Rift, we had a banger of a matchup, Cloud9 versus Team Liquid. Now, this is for number 1 in Group A, has huge playoff implications. In the very beginning of this series, we see First Blood going over to Cloud9 here as they shut down OpTic. He's got nowhere to go, burns the flash as well, doesn't matter. Talia is going to pick up that first kill. Loki going to take that extra gold to the bank and put it to use in this fight here. During the Dragon, we have a huge fight breakout, and it is Blabber on the Nefiri that starts popping off, chases APA over the ledge, gets pushed back over by the Azir ult. It's going to make it a little bit easier for him to chase down Core JJ, who also has nowhere to go. That's going to be massive advantage going into another mid-game fight here as the top side goes down, and all of the members of Team Liquid go down one by one. Not a single member of Cloud9 falling here as Loki finishes the last kill with the Talia. They're going to easily take game number 1. It's absolute domination as they defeat the Nexus Tower with 19-4 as the kill disparity. Going into game number 2, Cloud9 start off well again. This time Blabber on the Lilia, going to be hunting down OpTic, who apparently is the easiest First Blood in the game, at least if you watch this series. By the way, they're not done with this fight as Yun thinks he's safe. Nope, Loki's coming around the corner on the Aurora with a clean pickup there. And at this point, though, Team Liquid had come back. They're now in the lead. They're in the base of Cloud9, but Cloud9 with a brilliant base defense here are able to shut down each of these players one by one. Team Liquid kicking themselves for perhaps overstepping in this engagement. Cloud9 holds strong, but that wasn't the only time they had to do this. The final Nexus Tower falls. All of Cloud9 coming out of the fountain somehow turn this fight around, and Team Liquid are having to run away, but it's not going to be enough as they will get shut down. It's a double kill for Aurora here. Blabber absolutely popping off this series. They get the Baron and then just run it down to the enemy base. They're going to shut down Team Liquid in a match that it looked like it should have been closer than it was. In the end, it's going to be Cloud9 with that first seed in Group A. They did a phenomenal job in that series. Let's take a look at the rest of the group standings as they were. Well, first, let's take a look at the matches. So these were the other matches that took place. Shopify were able to defeat 100 Thieves, FlyQuest 2 over Dignitas, and Lion 2-0 over Disguise. That's going to lead us to our overall standings for both Groups A and B. Cloud9 winning Group A, as we mentioned previously, but FlyQuest winning in Group B. I don't think anyone's surprised about this. Those two teams will face off against each other for the first place seeding into playoffs. We've also got 2 elimination matches. It's going to be Lion versus Dignitas and 100 Thieves versus Disguised. So I think 100 Thieves shouldn't have an issue with Disguised, but certainly lots of implications to see how that playoff bracket will ultimately play out. But that's not the only League of Legends action that we had. We also had over on the other side of the pond, we had the LEC in Europe, and we had some banger matchups at the Carmine Corp Arena. It was a sight to behold. We've got KC holding it down at home against the other French team, Vitality. So the French grudge match here, but Carmine Corp were incredible. Starting off the first game, Yike with a strong kill on to Carzzy, but keep your eye on Kalis. This young man has been popping off in the bot lane, gets a double kill here on the Varus to give KC a strong lead. At this point in time, it's 23-7. Look at this kill from Kalis. Flashes out after the kill, but this play's not done yet. Keep your eyes on Vladdy here as on the Silas goes in, steals the Nico ult, gets the triple knockup. It's gonna be a clean game 1 victory for Carmine Corp. Now, going into game 2 though, Vitality had some answers back. Keep your eyes on Carzzy into the next game here. Here's one of their team fights around the Dragon Pit. A huge double knockup coming in from the Gnar. Now, Carzzy though, gonna be able to pick up 1 kill, make it 2 kills. Ultimately, it's a huge win in that fight for Vitality. They're gonna continue on, and Carzzy's not done yet. He's gonna get a few more kills here in the base of Carmine Corp to start shutting them down. They do come out on top with a clean answer back. That's gonna force us to a game 3. And let's see how this one plays out. Carmine Corp in their home stadium. They don't want to lose this in front of the fans. Going into map number 3 here, We've got, once again, Vladdy and Kalist popping off. Yike coming in with the Pantheon ult to start things off. He's going to shut down one player for Kalist to be able to finish him off. Now pushing up through the bot lane. Aurelion Sol has nowhere to go. Carmine Corp just very strongly pushed through with that Baron buff in hands. Pantheon coming in with the ult, and unfortunately Vitality don't have anywhere to go. It was a strong performance for Carmine Corp, and they're looking great heading into even the international tournaments. I think this team has a great chance to do very well at MSI and maybe even Worlds as well. I'm very excited for these rosters. Now, looking at the match schedule here, this is what just transpired over the last weekend. So we saw G2 beating SK. Ultimately, we lead to our current standings over in the LEC. Carmine Corp, of course, on top. Fnatic close behind with a 7-2 record. Rogue and SK already eliminated, but in the middle there's still the top 6 to be decided. Ultimately, we will have a game between GX and Team Heretics. That's going to be the last match that will decide ultimately who makes it into playoffs. So keep your eyes on the action.
That's all going down again in the LEC studio at the time of recording. So we'll be able to give you all of the findings for all of that. Make sure you tune in on Wednesday for the news. And then on Friday, of course, we'll give you the outcome for all of that and potentially what playoffs are going to be looking like as well. But keeping within the IP for Riot. Now we're going to be shifting our focus over towards Valorant, as we typically do, to then congratulate the 3 teams from the Pacific region on now joining the other 6 from the Chinese region. In the Americas, they have completed their regional playoff bracket. So RRQ, Gen G, and of course Paper Rex will be the 3 representatives from the Pacific region now joining America's 3 and China's 3 as well for Masters Toronto that's happening in Toronto. Paper Rex, by the way, they eliminated T1, that's Masters Bangkok champion, and DRX, a Pacific favorite as well. So you know that they might be bringing the fuego when it comes to Masters Toronto. Which leaves our last region to complete their regional playoffs. VCT EMEA, after their tech pauses, have completed at least their first few rounds of playoffs, and we know that 2 of 3 potential teams will be going over to Masters Toronto. But here's how the action did unfold from this past weekend. Our top teams, Team Heretics, Team Liquid, they get that first round bye, but starting off on the 8th, this past Friday, we did have BBL Esports versus Na'Vi and Fnatic versus Foot Esports. This one was certainly interesting. BBL Esports, they are highly regarded as a very top team within the region. Na'Vi, though, we know what they can absolutely bring to the table. This map won on Lotus. This was actually going to be BBL's pick, and they have constantly showcased why they are a force to be reckoned on this map mode combination. Sociable, in particular, on the Teo. Say what you will, nerfs inbound, but really good utility being used here at the end. Trains, Sociable, Last Alive, in the 1v2 situation, trying to play off the door peek, gets the first, and knows that hero Last Alive has to play for the spike tap. He'll win that round there in the end. Very close as far as the first half is concerned, but going in towards the second, once BBL got on the defense, they really showed Na'Vi what it means to retake some of these sites. And, well, you saw right there at the end, Magnum, it was really his weekend, man. We'll talk more about that later. In towards the Fracture off of the map 1 win. This was Na'Vi's pick, and you could clearly tell why. Through the early salvo, they won the pistol. That sets up the econ for the second, which means that BBL were put on the back burner. But through 3 rounds off the bounce, BBL then got said econ online. The problem with Fracture are the adaptations, constantly throwing wrenches into the system. The way that Na'Vi were playing this, in particular without the Tejo, they were playing on a double initiator stint alongside with the Fade and the Breach, means that they can take space very, very quickly and aggressively. And if you've never played Fracture, rotations have to happen at a flip of a hat for the defense. Otherwise, you're going to be put on the back burners. BBL struggled with that in the first half, but in the second half, they were able to get the leg up on the entire situation, winning 3 offensive rounds in a row, lost the next, then another 3 offenses. Now they got themselves a 2-0 win. They'll go into that qualification match. And on to the other quarterfinal match. Foot versus Fnatic. You got Alpha's number 2 versus Omega's number 3, and Fnatic have constantly been making a name for themselves, but Look, Foot's got some namesakes on their roster, specifically Ada Captain, Mr. Fallen, Craxus. Like, all of these guys have been playing at the top of the game for quite some time. You could say the same thing for Alpha A and Boaster on the opposite side. But map 1 on Lotus was an interesting decision for Foot to allow through. Not only that, they actually picked it. They had not looked that comfortable on it throughout the entirety of the season. On the other side, Fnatic have looked very good on this the entire season. The waylay out of Zeus was a thing, I'll say that much. Didn't exactly have the utmost impact comparatively to Chronicle on the opposite side. On the Vipers, so good on Lotus was Chronicle. He went 19-10 on this map. The Crashies fade, also a nice sight to be able to see on top of the Rays. And, well, Fnatic, through this first half, was really the solidification that they were going to win this this first map. I mean, a 6-for-4 half, that's not that easy to do when it comes down to Lotus, and it meant that it set themselves up wonderfully for a defensive side. They just had to retake a handful of times. They got themselves a 1-0 lead after losing the pistol in the subsequent second. So in towards Split, Fnatic's map pick. This is somewhere that they could definitely feel a lot more comfortable. They are able to force out the double duelist, Alpha A, back over towards the Rays. You got Kajik playing on the Yoru. Very tough to play Split without one these days, though G2 over the Americas has been getting by. I digress. Foot really struggled on the early get-go as far as Split is concerned. It took them a whole 6 rounds to finally put one on the board after the attack pause came through, and they were able to finally get a strategy working, but then Fnatic made them eat their words. We kept on trading rounds back and forth until we finally had ourselves, you guessed it, another 6-4 half, and that meant that we had ourselves a pretty big lead for Fnatic, or an 8-4, excuse me, as we then led in towards the next one. And much like the map number 1, Foot were able to win the initial. They got the early econ, but then Fnatic, they were slowly fighting, continuously getting their way back in towards the map. They got themselves that extension of the lead, and it's Alpha A to lead the entire way. 26-10 out of Alpha A, 44-23 for the entirety of it, which means that our next semifinal matchups, the first qualification matchups, are solidified, but that's not happening 2 days from the end of the competitions we just listed. Now we got to go down to the lower round number 1, Na'Vi versus Carmine Corp and Team Vitality. They've been waiting down the lower bracket as they were the 4th team from Omega and Alpha groups respectively. Na'Vi versus Carmine Corp started off the 9th, and it was Icebox to get things underway. This was definitely a time, I will say that much, if you're looking at it from Navi's perspective. Constantly fighting from behind on the opening half. It was an offensive masterclass from Carmine Corp on this Icebox half, using something that, as somebody that watches a decent amount of Americas, no Harbor, they were able to get it done with the Viper. They were getting a lot of information off of Sadek. He was playing on that KO. We know how influential that knife could be, as well as the Teo. The double initiator on top of double smokes, no duelists, was definitely a tough one to spin for Carmine Corp, but they made it work at the end, all the way in towards overtime. They won the 2 rounds required, which means it set themselves up wonderfully for Split, potentially. This was Navi's pick, though, which meant that they could potentially extend it towards a map number 3, and off of recency, Split should be a lot more of a comfortable place for them. Shallow on the Astra, comparatively to the opposite side of running the double smokes with the Omen and the Viper, meant that you could have more utility in the post lane, especially with Hero now on the Vice as well. You could tell that Na'Vi were mostly playing for a defensive side to play on lockdown, but the way that their composition would at least suggest with the Rays and the Fade that they could still retake with the Duelist in an initiator composition. So going in towards at least the second half, Na'Vi did have a slight lead, and Carmine Corp, as far as the offensive side is concerned, really started to let them have it. I mean, the first 6 rounds all went towards Carmine Corp's way, and then we started to have a game on our hands. Until this moment of time, 11-11, then the last handful of rounds finally got one, until we just needed one for Na'Vi, and in those final few rounds, it was just a quick little peak top ramps. We're going to Ascent, the decider map number 3. These 2 teams have spent a lot of time on Ascent over the past calendar year, in between the kickoffs and this moment of time. Doesn't mean that they're any better at it. The meta has changed exponentially in between then and now. But if there's one person to always look at when it comes down towards this team, it's going to be the Deadlock pick out of Angel. Constantly playing Deadlock on a lot of different maps, and the utility for Deadlock can be a real annoying thing to try to work your way through if you are Carmine Corp, who put their eggs in the basket for Martine on the Jet, had a really good series, but really struggled in the Ascent. Only went 18 and 17 in that final map, and although Angel didn't pop off, it was constantly setting up teammates for success. Ruxic in particular, Hero had a great map number 3, 23 to 14, which means that Navi will live to fight in another round. Bringing our way over towards the other lower round number 1 match, Foot Esports versus Team Vitality. In Foot Esports, again, as I was talking about in their opening round 1 match, they have been to so many different playoffs in this moment in time for players like Ada Captain, for UDJ, Craxus, Mr. Fallen, and Zeus. They've been around the block for a handful of times. They're also going up against Team Vitality, who have veterans within the scene themselves, specifically for Durka and Saivo. So you really got to think that this one on paper had the lay of the land to be a slobber knocker, and on Fracture, 4 Foot's choice, you could clearly tell why they wanted it. It was mostly for the offensive pick. Ada Captain on the Brimstone would match on the opposite side, but the biggest consideration for a compositional difference is going to be Craxus on that KO, a staple of a character. The amount of information you're able to get from that and the teamwork showcase for Foot, even in a post-plant triple body stack, they could really do no wrong as far as the offense is concerned in that second half. They got a 1-0 lead going in towards Team Vitality's pick, which was over towards Split. And although they do have recent success on this through the group stage, the reason why they find themselves to actually be the number 4 team out of Group Alpha, it was not here. Not this time around. Foot Esports were well too determined to try to make it in towards another Masters run, let alone for the next day of competition. Big shout out for you to Jay. 37 and 22 with 185 ADR and 82% KAST, which means that Foot Esports would eliminate Team Vitality from the entirety of the tournament, and the bracket definitely needs to get a certain amount of an update as well, as we will eliminate 2 teams. We will not be seeing them for quite some time, whatever that the VCT EMEA scene may look like, but then we had more matches going on throughout the weekend. There's a lot of Valorant, all best of 3s. The EMEA region is extremely competitive and close to one another. Here's how things did shake off next. Team Heretics versus BBL. This is the first semifinal match. This was the first match that we're going to finally give somebody a ticket, a team a ticket to Masters Toronto. Heretics, they had the first round bye, and everybody was expecting them to do well here, albeit for their shortcomings, a handful of group matches, BBL definitely let them have it. In towards Ascent for the map 1 pick was BBL's pick, and they did have a very good offensive side, but it was the early setup for Heretics getting on the defensive side for a 9-3 half that set themselves up so wonderfully. Even on that one side for defense, Benji Fishy, 9 and 6 for Rienz as well. Like, it just felt like everybody was playing their part to set up Miniboo and Woot on the duelists for success. So it's going to be a 1-0 lead here for Team Heretics. They take the Ascent, which means that they go in towards their map pick of an icebox that we have seen throughout the entirety of VCT EMEA stage number 1. This sets up Benji Fishy on the Killjoy, much like it does a lot of different teams, and he looks so good on this character. Able to anchor down sites, quick rotations over towards the back. The defensive side for Team Heretics is where they finally started to lay in that they could potentially end it into, but the offense for BBL Esports, never say die attitude, finally put themselves in towards a 12-12, which meant that we were going in towards overtime. Everybody getting loud, Loon letting them know, but it did not matter. 2 rounds of overtime is all that it would require. Benji Fishy popping off for his team. Team Heretics, they get their ticket to Masters Toronto, the other upper semifinal. Team Liquid, going up against Fnatic, went the distance and started off with a split map 1. This was TL's pick. And again, they love playing split. They constantly feel like they can put themselves in a good situational advantage off of the composition, which was mirrored on the opposite side. So there was no excuse whatsoever besides your executes if you really do think about it. I personally would say that Serial had a uncharacteristic game. Aiden 14 isn't typically what you do see out of the young phenom, but TL were in a really bad spot. Fnatic throughout the entirety of the second half on defense just never let TL retake a site entirely. Good movement coming through from Off by Air. We constantly see him on the raise throughout the entirety of his career. Gets the clutch there at the end. Wins map number 1, 30-10, going in towards the Icebox map number 2. Fnatic's pick. Potential for them to end 2-0 here, given that they have been able to beat much better teams in TL. No shade to them, but they have in the past. Last little bit of defense, 1v odd situation. It wasn't going to be the second person for the trade. The third surely was there. The Gecko pick, as unorthodox as it is for a lot of different regions, was again mirrored here. The only difference was Kajic was on the Sage. And maybe Fnatic might need to go back to the drawing board on their Ice Walls executes because it just was not there. The retake's that much better for Team Liquid as they're going to be able to at least extend the series here in the final few moments. You got your Viper's Pit down, doesn't even matter. Red dots all galore. Last killed, you got to hop on the spike. We're going map number 3. Fracture is the decider. And of course it had to go the distance between these two teams. Kajic back over towards the Neon. You almost need one to have a good time on Fracture with how quick these rotations are required. But again, the only difference for a composition would be Nats on the Vice comparatively to Alpha Ye on the Cypher. And if you think about it just from a layman's perspective, the lockdown that you have from a Cypher and the threat from a site would funnel a lot of players in towards the other one. But Team Liquid were wily than ever, especially on their offensive side. They had themselves an 8-4 half. Fnatic fought back valiantly on the offensive side to force it then in towards an overtime here, where they were then shouting back across the stage. Hands on head for Benji Fishy, but it only took 2 rounds again when it came down to overtime, and Fnatic would beat Team Liquid in 3. It took to go the entire distance, sure, but Kajic fought valiantly. 78% KAST, and although Liquid did lose this series, they would not lose out on a chance of glory when it came down to Masters Toronto. But Fnatic, they get that ticket. Here's the update for the bracket after those May 10th matches for the winners semifinals. We still have that winners finals matchup to be worried about on next weekend, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We did have final matches to eliminate 2 more teams to set up the last matchup for the final qualification spot. We're going to start off with TL. They're going to be going up against Na'Vi. In this one, as far as the vetoes are concerned, tough to gauge, but still, you had Omega versus Alpha matchups. These two teams hadn't seen each other since the kickoffs, but it may not even matter. There's so much that has changed. Icebox is going to be Navi's pick, and much like I was talking about earlier for TL and how robust some of their map pool is, this setup for Na'Vi was just so good. Again, when one team's playing Teo and the other one isn't, you like to imagine that's free damage off of the salvos you might be passing up if you're able to land it. I mean, at the end of it, Angel only had 3 assists, but still the threat was there. And Hero on the Sentinel play, constantly a thorn in towards the site executes that TL were trying to throw their way. Here's the last few moments. 2v2 on the site, nowhere angle to be found. You did have the dark cover on top of it, so good luck trying to find that one off of the ping. It's a 1-0 lead now for Na'Vi. In towards split will be Team Liquid's pick. And as I was saying earlier, they do love it here, mostly being because they can play a flexible style. Paddock over towards the Fade, Camo now over towards the Yoru, and Keiko is on the Raze. Now, Qualinoob will match that on the opposite side, but Qualinoob typically always matches the Raze on the opposite side as one of his main tricks. But Shao, he was probably the biggest player to watch for, in my humbled opinion. On the Astra, was constantly setting up plays, was getting the better of Cyril on the opposite side. It's a lot of these different stuns and pulls that he was able to set up for his team for success right there. That time it was Cyril, but I gotta say, man, I mean, it was definitely missing as far as Shao's is concerned. It only can do so much when Team Liquid's teamwork is popping off the way that it was. 13-4 there. Na'Vi barely had a whimper on split, but they had the map 3 fallback on Ascent. The problem is, TL were in their bag off of that map number 2 win, and albeit a 6-6 half, it's not going to be good enough for Na'Vi as they struggled throughout the entirety of this stage on Ascent for offense. They only put up 2 rounds on offense. Team Liquid will eliminate Na'Vi and stop their lower bracket run dead in its tracks, and it's Keiko that almost led the way entirely besides for Paddock. He had a great map number 3, 21-11 for Paddock, 19-10 out of Keiko. And that means that Na'Vi, we will not be seeing them until the next stage. BBL Esports versus Foot. 2 of the best to do it. 2 Omega teams facing off against each other in an elimination match. And the last time that these 2 teams facing off against each other, BBL Esports were able to win 2-0. Surely it might be a different story here, not too sure. But Magnum, I mean, he had himself an absolute whale of a series. He may have died there. This Haven was probably the biggest spot for Foot, given how well their offensive executes were there. They had themselves a very good first half, but it did not matter. BBL, man, are they ever just so icy. BBL Magnum there at the end, playing off the last angle required on the C site to force out overtime, but Foot Esports only needed the 2 rounds. It got done here on the offense. They were able to find first blood. They played for full retake on C, and they were able to win that map number 1 out of Captain. Very happy with his teammates there. So going in towards the split, this was going to be Foot's pick. And maybe it should have been. Maybe it should not have been. Excuse me. I'm getting lost for words here. You're about to see here momentarily. The opening pistol round, good for BBL. They're setting themselves up to win the next one. Everything's fine. It's Valorant at the end of the day. Third round won by Foot. And then it was a 10-2 half. Look, at the end of it, Split is a very difficult map to execute offensively, but only putting up 2 rounds, that's not going to cut it, and you felt like Foot were a little deflated going in towards their defensive half because it just took BBL the next 3 to be able to close out map number 2. Foot's choice, by the way, 13-2, and now they're going to put themselves in a position to potentially eliminate Foot. Tied up, in towards the ascent we go for the decider once again, and throughout this opening first half, BBL up on the defense, the offense not too bad for Foot. Every single round that they were able to win was because the spike was being planted, but the aggression from BBL off of the split map number 2 just simply was a problem. Their retakes were met with aggression. Their initial executes also aggressive. Everything for BBL is aggression all the time, and Foot just could not react in time. So BBL, they'll win in 3, an impressive 13-2 on split, but an even better 13-10 here on Ascent means that Foot Esports will go home, and BBL Esports, as pumped as they are not done quite yet. As the bracket would suggest, 2-1 wins for Liquid and Na'Vi, BBL Esports over Foot Esports. They will now face each other, TL and BBL, for that final spot. Again, Heretics and Fnatic, they were already solidified for 2 of 3 teams for VCT EMEA's representation for Masters Toronto that's happening at the end of this week, or the end of June, excuse me. But still, a lot more Valorant left to be played. We'll have those matches on the 16th of May and the conclusion of all of VCT EMEA towards the end of the weekend. We're going to be framing that up throughout the entirety of Friday's episode. You want to make sure that you're seated for that one because there's going to be some pretty good matches. But that's all we have, at least for now. Let's go ahead and take a quick deep breath, put the games on the shelf, and talk about some news because we had some stuff go down this past weekend.
Starting off the news, I want to talk about a very impressive player. For the first time ever, we have an esports player qualifying for 2 of the competitions at EWC at the same time. It's going to be Zhao Hai, who will compete for both Street Fighter 6 and Fatal Fury. He won Street Fighter 6 at the last EWC and now looks to defend his title in this game and compete in another game at the same time. What a Giga Chad. I cannot wait to see if he can pull it off.
Overwatch 2 has now announced a new partnership. They are doing a collaboration with Capcom, most specifically for Street Fighter. So you get certain characters like Juno Chun-Li or M. Bison Sigma, or my favorite, Guile76, should be in the game very soon.
Over into Valorant, it's going to be the perhaps final retirement of FNS. This is actually the second time the Sentinel player has retired, as he did previously retire from Counter-Strike, now finally retiring from Valorant as well. Will he come back? Time will tell if he decides to come back, because this guy seems to never want to quit.
It could be another tactical shooter. He might come back out of retirement. Yeah, but now, speaking of another tactical shooters, Falcons have now solidified. The rumors seem to be utterly true that Kisioke is being bought out from Spirit Academy to then join 4-Team Falcons in place of Magic's. This team has no end. Their ceiling has no height.
And the last thing we want to talk about is Dashi commenting on some old Call of Duty footage where he seems flabbergasted that we didn't have aim assist back in the day. Talk to me. I'm the Halo 2 guy, and I can tell you that Aiming has definitely gotten easier over time, especially Call of Duty. When I turn that game on, I feel like I can't miss because the game aims for me. But very funny commentary from Dashy. Love to see one of the new school players kind of recognizing how the timeline has played out and how aiming has changed over time.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I mean, like, you go back to like even like the early doors of Halo 3, we didn't have dynamic aim assists. Like that's a new thing that just it came out of nowhere in the new age of games. But whatever it may be, we're not talking about controller esports for this time being. Otherwise, we're gonna have to open up an entire podcast. We're gonna be talking about Counter-Strike 2 because, as per usual, there's a Counter-Strike 2 tournament happening this week. PGL Astana is going down in Kazakhstan, and although there may not be the top 3 teams in attendance, Spirit are still poised potentially to hoist a trophy. It's 16 teams for a Swiss Stage bracket. You want to win 4 before you lose 4, and then you're slotted into a single elimination playoff bracket. Here's how the day 1 did start. Day 1 started off with an absolute banger, Aurora versus Big, and this one was interesting because the last time that we did have Big on our screens, in my opinion, was that round 1 matchup versus Mouse, and they took a map off of Mouse, funnily enough. Aurora, on the opposite side, have been trying to find their feet beneath them. I think that this Aurora team has seen some of their lows as of late. Woxic, Wakadia, definitely some of the straightest shooters, but I mean, going up against Big here definitely felt like that it should be an easy round 1 match. Big put up 11 rounds versus Aurora, and they were definitely playing with their food, it felt like, at certain points in time. Aurora on Mirage should definitely feel very, very comfortable, and well, they took Big's map pick 13-11. So going in towards the Inferno, this is where things got a little bit more wily for Aurora. They played a lot of other top teams on this map. They've lost terribly, and they wanted to practice maybe a couple of executes and let alone get some good in real world experience versus Big, and they got it. I mean, 13-11 even here at the end. Really good executes coming through in the 2v2. Last player is going to be hyped all the way back in the corner. He'll find the last 2 kills. So now Big, they force out a Dust 2 decider versus Aurora, and well, you can tell by the camera in my voice, if you don't have a comfort for Dust 2, honestly, why are you playing competitive Counter-Strike? Big Jiggle Peaks coming through from the double door over by the long peak for A, but still, the first half not suggestive on who was going to get the leg up. Big beat Aurora 2-1. What? And then going in towards G2 MIBR, commiserations to D2 Esports, right? I mean, like, you unfortunately, Modesty gets bought out. You're having roster issues as well. Taz, your coach, has to step into play, and although, like, he's been known in the past for VP's highs, it's just not exactly where you want to be with Hades coming in towards the mix in lieu of the Modesty acquisition. G2 ended up going map 3 versus MIBR, where things went down on Nuke, and although G2 in the past might have said otherwise, that they would look good on this, it was not the case. They lost to MIBR in that map number 3. VP going up against Ninjas in Pajamas. Gosh, I love seeing that NIP logo up on the screen. And VP, you could put them in the same conversation with like Aurora. They had their struggles, much like Na'Vi, being able to face other middle of the round teams. And well, it was a showcasing right here. On train, pop flash all the way up at the top. Is going to catch a player all full by surprise, playing under the smoke, trying to funnel their way through the upper hallways. Fame might be able to find one. 2v odd situation where they have a collective 10 HP. They drop down, a cold sneeze, a cold breeze will take them out of the mix. And well, NIP were able to take that off of VP in a 2-1 fashion as well. Spirit are the top dogs in attendance. They went up against Gamer Legion in their opening round 1 matchup, and whether they were taking them for granted or not, I'm starting to rate these GL guys pretty high, man. PR was looking very good throughout this match. They took Team Spirit, I wouldn't say to the full brink. They didn't go to overtime, but they took 11 rounds on the 2 maps that they lost. That is a big moment for Spirit off of their day 1's worth of competition, taking the number 1 seeded team at this tournament to at least as far as a map can go without extending into overtime is a pretty big feat in my opinion, as these last few moments coming through. Rez could not find much damage. Towson only has 5 HP, and yeah, he's going to get scouted out through Squeaky, so that's how that one went down. Last one would end up being for Mongols versus Fudia. And, well, Fudia, as of late, the last few times that we've seen them in tournament, have not exactly had some bright spots. They've had a lot of time and breaks in between the last time we saw them and now. The same could be said for the Mongols. Again, they are a force, and how can you not love them? They are so passionate. Their Tech 9 executes so good, and then it just all completely blows up right in their face. Well played out from Fudia. Starting to understand how slow roll the Mongols like to play off the executes if they don't have 910's AWP to back up their oomph, and they're going to be able to take this map number 1. Yeah, I mean, 2v4, not much you can do. You just play in the post plant. You're going to have to retake eventually, and there's the wide peak blitz there with the Deagle. Will get the last few kills, and finally the AWP to ring on true. Furia going to go map 3 versus the Mongols, who, as of late, are definitely noted to maybe take a couple rounds off of like Vitality, Mals, are forced to play out this map number 3, and well, it went all the way to a 13-9 scoreline, but still, Techno Blitz, they're going to be able to take that in a map number 3. They're going to be able to go into the 1-0 pool.
All right, so we're going to jump into day number 2, which is also concluded at Astana. Let's take a look at some of the matches, starting off with Team Spirit versus the Ninjas in Pajamas. This was a tough one. Ninjas feeling good about the last one. This post-plant situation. Magic's just trying to buy time so this bomb can go off as the members of NIP looking for him, but he's just too sneaky, able to secure that one. And I mean, look at the scoreline. Team Spirit definitely bouncing back after that close game yesterday against Gamers Legion, now at a 10-1. Going into Dust 2, have a massive lead here. And in this situation, honestly, NIP put up a good fight here. We see you Jerks getting the double kill here, but I tell you what, it's only a matter of time before a man named Donk shows up to the party. And he's gonna swing through Catwalk here and shut down you Jerks, who thought he was doing something good for his squad. Ultimately, Team Spirit take that one 2-0. Now we go down to the lower side with G2 versus OpTic. Now, this is an interesting one. A lot of teams haven't heard of OpTic. G2, as we previously mentioned, had some visa issues with Hunter, so Taz, their coach, having to step in. But I tell you what, don't sleep on this old man. He used to be one of the best players in the game, so one of the better coaches to have behind you in a situation like this. We end up getting pushed to a map 3. It's tied 6-6 in the pistol round. Snack's gonna have the bomb down, but watch the play here. In the end, it's OpTic in the very last round. Ponk pushing through. He's gonna be able to get a clean, sneaky double kill and the disarm for the W. They gotta feel good about that. Maybe not as good as if Hunter was there, but let's jump over back into the winner side. We got Mongols versus MIBR. And this one, Mongols start strong. They had a 3-0 lead after winning the pistol, going to the end of game number 2. Honestly, it was easy from front to back for the Mongols. MIBR looking like they're gonna have to figure things out on the lower side as we watch the end of this game play out. Honestly, 9-10 just having a phenomenal series, as is typically the case if he's allowed to roam the map as comfortably as he does. He does also get the last kill with the op. Now, onto the other side, we got Aurora trying to bounce back after that loss to Big yesterday, facing off against a hot rising team, Hotu, who just a few months ago were the 150th best Counter-Strike team, now in the top 75, definitely playing above their weight class here at this tournament. But look at this, they put up a huge fight. They push overtime in map number 2, ultimately get this win here in this last round. And Woxic and the boys probably scratching their heads a bit. They struggled yesterday against Big as well, so maybe a little bit nervous going into this game number 3, but man, I gotta talk about Yuka, the op player for Hotu. This guy dropping a +19 in this series overall. Definitely the star player for Hotu that could be behind their most recent successes. This map 3 on Nuke was exciting as Aurora had the lead going into this last round here, 12-11. We see a awkward situation, doesn't know if he should fake it or not, and then pushes forward, but unfortunately gets shut down by the Aurora squad. They're gonna actually take that dub. Now, hopping over to it, Navi versus Big. Navi don't want to suffer the same fate as Aurora did yesterday. And in this pistol round, keep your eyes on Tabson. This is probably one of the clutchest plays that I have seen. Bit killing his teammates left and right here. Im gets one as well. Tabson, last player alive, 1v3 scenario. The flick shots are clean, headshots left and right. Now, last player in a 1v1 situation. Knows exactly where he is and swings out with perfect timing on both sides to shut down JL. Impressive performance from Tabson there, but Navi still fighting. 10-10. This fight was insane. Several players dying all at the same time. It's gonna be a 2v4 situation. That's gonna be a little bit too hard to win against a team like Navi, as they're gonna close out the series. And let's take a look at the group stage here and everything that's been transpiring so far. Like we said, it's a Swiss bracket, so round 3 is going to be tomorrow. Only 4 teams left in the upper side. Everybody else still fighting their way into that playoff bracket. But right now, Spirit's still the top dogs. They've shown signs of maybe a little bit of stumbles here and there, but they still look extremely strong.
Yeah, again, all these they're matches that are actually happening right now. The Mongols versus Na'Vi at the time of this recording, and then Astralis versus Spirit that is going to be going down today on this Monday, right? So all of the Swiss will be completed throughout the entirety of the week. We're going to be framing up that single elimination bracket on Friday's episode, going in towards that playoff bracket that will be concluded throughout the weekend. But did we miss anything? You got to let us know in the comments down below. Make sure that you subscribe and follow along on the Global Gaming Network channel for all the different videos and all the different talk shows, because we go over a lot, because there is so much to talk about when it comes down to esports. We look forward to all of your thoughts in the comments down below. Y'all stay safe, and we'll see you on Wednesday for some news.